The galaxy was quiet that night. Countless stars shimmered over the endless darkness, and the massive warship Valkor drifted among them like a steel predator waiting for its next meal. Inside, Admiral Karth of the Zephyr Dominion stood before the viewing window, his many eyes fixed on the blinking lights of distant worlds. Humans, he muttered, always the same story, always the same myth. Behind him, a young officer hesitated. Sir, are the stories true? About their weapons? The railguns. Karth gave a low, rumbling laugh. Childish nonsense. Humans could never build something like that. It is a tale to frighten new recruits, nothing more. The crew chuckled, but not all of them were convinced. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries. They had seen empires rise and fall, but humans were different. No one had seen them in almost 100 years. Some said they were extinct. Others whispered that they were hiding. But the one thing every soldier remembered were the stories. Tales of thunder that could tear through mountains, weapons that used magnetic force instead of plasma, and shots that could destroy a cruiser with one strike. Those stories had another name. They called them railguns. Karth turned to his crew. Enough myths. Humans are gone. Our scanners show a derelict signal near the outer belt. Prepare a boarding team. We will see what is left of these ancient ghosts. The Valkor descended toward a drifting ship, an old human vessel, broken and silent. Its hull floated in the void like a corpse, cold and forgotten. When the alien boarding party landed on its surface, their lights flickered across strange scars along the metal. The marks were clean, long, and burned with heat unlike any weapon they knew. Commander, one of the soldiers said quietly, "These are rail scars. Do not be foolish," Karth snapped. "There are no human weapons left. Their kind destroyed themselves long ago." But deep inside, even he could not explain what he saw. The scars looked too perfect. Smooth lines, melted steel, and traces of magnetic residue. Something had once fired here. Something powerful. The alien soldiers moved deeper into the ship. The air was frozen, and the halls were littered with fragments of uniforms, helmets, and rusted weapons. Everything seemed dead, until one of them noticed a faint red light blinking behind a cracked control panel. "Admiral, there is power here," Karth frowned. "Impossible. That ship has been dead for decades." The soldier pressed a button, and suddenly the control room came alive with a low electric hum. Warning lights flickered. Consoles started glowing. A human voice echoed through the static, calm, mechanical, and haunting. "Power levels restored. Automated defense protocol online. Cut the transmission," Karth ordered. But before his men could react, a new sound filled the air. A deep, growing vibration like thunder coming from the heart of the ship. The decks trembled. The walls shuddered. And then with a blinding flash, a beam of light erupted from the ship's side, slicing through space. The nearest Zephyr escort ship vanished in an instant. No explosion, no sound. Just disappearance. Erased from existence. The Valkor's crew froze in disbelief. Karth shouted, "What happened? What kind of weapon is that?" His sensors screamed with overload warnings. The energy output was beyond anything they had ever recorded. One of the officers turned pale. "Sir, it was kinetic. No plasma detected. No fusion reaction, just metal." Karth's voice trembled. "Yes, Admiral. A projectile fired by electromagnetic acceleration. Like the old human legends, the bridge went silent. Every officer exchanged nervous looks. The old myths were not lies. They were warnings. "Find me the source of that weapon," Karth demanded. The tactical officer stared at the radar, his voice shaking. "Sir, it came from the human ship itself. It's reactivating." On the screen, the derelict vessel's name slowly appeared through static. HSS Dominion's Wrath. Karth's eyes widened. He had heard that name before. From the old war records, from the stories that older generals whispered after too much wine. The Dominion's Wrath had been humanity's last dreadnought, said to carry the weapon that ended the Great War of Sol. The ship's systems came fully online. Its hull panels unfolded, revealing massive rails glowing with white-hot energy. The faint hum turned into a roar that vibrated through the alien ship's hull. "Admiral," whispered his second officer, "that is no derelict. That is a weapon." The human voice spoke again, louder this time through every comm channel in range. "Unidentified vessel. You are trespassing in restricted human space. Leave now, or face demonstration." "Open fire!" Karth shouted in panic. The alien fleet unleashed plasma bolts, streaks of green and blue lighting up the darkness. But before the shots could reach the target, another flash burst from the Dominion's wrath. One railgun round, came pure tungsten, accelerated beyond comprehension, tore through 3 alien cruisers in a single line. There was no time to react. No time to fight back. Only fear. The humans were supposed to be gone. Their worlds were supposed to be ashes. But the proof was right there. A living ghost from humanity's forgotten age. The Valkor pulled back, its alarm screaming. Karth stared at the burning wreckage of his fleet. He could not believe what he was seeing. The humans had not vanished. They had simply gone silent, waiting for a reason to remind the galaxy who they were, and tonight, the galaxy had remembered. As the human ship drifted forward, reloading its colossal weapon, Karth whispered to himself, "So the legends were true. The thunder of Earth still lives." The Dominion's wrath turned its cannon toward him, light gathering once more inside its rails. "You wanted proof," the human voice said, calm and cold. "Now you have it." The shot fired, and everything went white. Far away from the battle where the Valkor was destroyed, deep inside a lonely asteroid field, a secret human base lay hidden. It had no name in the galactic maps, no signal for scanners to find. Only a handful of people knew it existed, and they called it simply Station Orion. Inside its cold metal walls, Commander Elias Mason sat in silence, staring at the holographic screen in front of him. The transmission from the Dominion's wrath played on repeat, the moment when the ancient railgun fired after a century of silence. He watched as the alien ships vanished one by one. "They found her," he whispered. The old warship woke up. Behind him, his engineer, Lieutenant Mara Quinn, adjusted the power cores of their own defense systems. "If the aliens found that dreadnought, it means they are getting close to us too," she said. Mason nodded. "Then it's time we remind the galaxy what humans can do." The rest of the crew gathered around him. They were the last generation born after the fall, when humanity lost most of its colonies and was pushed to the edge of extinction. The great human cities of Sol, Mars, and Europa were gone, but small fragments of the human race survived, hiding among the stars, rebuilding quietly, and on Station Orion. They had preserved one thing no alien could understand: the railgun. It was not just a weapon. It was a message and a symbol of human will. Every civilization in the galaxy had moved on to energy weapons, plasma cannons, and beams of light. But humans believed in something more brutal, more real. They believed in kinetic truth, the unstoppable force of matter in motion. "Is the main coil charged?" Mason asked. "Almost," Quinn replied. "It has been decades since we used it, but she still hums like thunder." The crew looked up through the observation deck. Outside the asteroid, hidden under thick layers of rock and dust, rested a massive machine, a railgun so large it stretched across the entire cavern. Thick magnetic coils wrapped around its long barrel, glowing faintly blue. Cables hummed. The entire asteroid seemed alive, pulsing with silent energy. Mason ran his hand along the metal railing. "When I was a child," he said, "they told me the galaxy forgot us. They said humanity was gone, but as long as this weapon breathes, we are not gone. We are waiting." Suddenly the silence broke. A proximity alarm blared through the base. "Commander! Multiple ships entering the outer belt. Alien signatures, Zephyr Dominion." Mason's eyes narrowed. "So they found us after all." The holographic map lit up with red dots. A fleet of 10 alien ships moved through the asteroid field, searching for the human signal. Their scanners pulsed through the void, sweeping each rock one by one. "Hide the energy readings," Mason ordered. "We stay cold until they're close enough." The crew worked fast, shutting down non-essential systems. The railgun stayed dormant, camouflaged under the asteroid's crust. For a moment, everything was still, until the alien commander's voice crackled through an open channel. "Unknown station. This is Admiral Karth of the Zephyr Dominion. Identify yourselves or be destroyed," Mason smirked. "You already tried that once," he muttered. "Didn't go well, did it?" He turned to Quinn. "Charge the core." "Full power," she hesitated. "If we fire, the entire asteroid might break apart." "I know," he said. "Do it anyway." The coils began to spin. Blue arcs of electricity danced across the control panels. The floor vibrated as power built inside the weapon. Outside, the airless void began to shimmer faintly, a sign that something enormous was about to happen. Inside the alien fleet, alarms started to scream. Massive energy surge detected. One of Karth's officers shouted. Karth leaned forward, eyes wide. No, not again. Before he could give another order, the asteroid split open. The outer shell cracked like an egg, revealing the monstrous railgun hidden within. The weapon's rails glowed white-hot, and for one terrifying second the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then it fired. A single tungsten slug shot out at a fraction of light speed. There was no flash, no sound, only destruction. One alien cruiser disappeared, then another. The shot passed through 3 ships before vanishing into the darkness, leaving behind a trail of burning debris. The asteroid trembled violently, sending dust and rocks into the void. Inside the control room, sparks flew as consoles overloaded. Direct hit, Quinn shouted over the chaos. 3 confirmed kills! Mason clenched his fists. Let the galaxy watch. Let them remember. Another wave of enemy ships turned their guns toward the asteroid, firing plasma beams that cut through space. The human crew braced as explosions rattled the station. Commander, shields down to 40%. Charge the railgun again, Mason said. We'll melt the coils if we do. Quinn yelled. Then we melt them, he replied coldly. Fire again. The weapon roared once more, shaking the entire asteroid. The second shot split the enemy formation in half. Ships turned to escape, colliding with each other in panic. The railgun fired again, and again, each shot sounding like thunder in the silence of space. By the 4th strike, the Zephyr fleet was in full retreat. Only 2 ships survived long enough to jump away. Inside Station Orion, the lights flickered and died. Smoke filled the air, but the crew was alive. They looked at Mason, their faces lit by the dying glow of the railgun. We did it, Quinn whispered. Mason didn't smile. He simply stared out into the stars. No, he said softly. We only reminded them. The room fell silent. Outside, the debris of the alien fleet floated across the asteroid field, glowing faintly under distant starlight. Somewhere far away, signals spread across the galaxy, transmissions of the impossible. Human railguns were real. Humanity was back. The galaxy did not sleep that night. From one end of the star map to the other, the news spread like fire. The humans were alive, and they had railguns. Every major government in the galaxy called emergency meetings. Admirals, generals, and ambassadors filled war rooms with panic and disbelief. The Zephyr Dominion, the largest and proudest empire, could not hide its humiliation. In a single day, an entire fleet had been destroyed by what their reports called a primitive kinetic weapon. But those who remembered the ancient wars knew better. It was not primitive. It was power. Pure, raw human power. Admiral Karth stood in front of a shattered hologram of his fleet, his face pale and tired. They were supposed to be gone, he said quietly. We wiped their colonies from existence. We left nothing. His officers remained silent. None dared to speak the truth, that the humans had not died. They had waited. In the shadows of the Dominion's war chamber, one scientist stepped forward. Admiral, he said softly, we have found an old data archive. It confirms the weapon that destroyed our ships used magnetic acceleration beyond anything ever seen. The kinetic force? It broke the laws of physics as we know them. Karth looked at the screen. The image of the railgun firing froze mid-frame, the barrel glowing white, the shot blurring through the void like a comet of death. Recreate it, Karth ordered. If the humans can build it, so can we. The scientist shook his head. We tried, Admiral. We have tried for centuries. The human mind works differently. They do not design weapons through logic alone. They build them through emotion, through anger, desperation, and the will to survive. That cannot be copied. Karth's claws tightened around the table. Then we will not copy it. We will destroy it. Far away, deep inside Station Orion, Commander Mason stared at the burned-out railgun coil. The weapon had saved them, but it was exhausted. The metal cracked, the core fried. Smoke still rose from the walls. The crew worked quietly, patching holes and repairing systems. Any sign of survivors from the alien fleet? Mason asked. 2 ships escaped, Commander, said Lieutenant Quinn. They jumped into hyperspace, probably carrying news back to their empire. Good, Mason said coldly. Let them run. Let them tell the truth. He walked to the window and looked at the stars. Once those stars had been filled with human colonies, bright and alive. Now most were silent, lost to history. But something stirred inside him, a feeling humanity had not felt in generations, pride. They think the war ended, he said, but it never did. It only went quiet. The crew listened. His voice was calm, but behind it was a storm. They erased our cities, Mason continued. They burned our world. They called us extinct, but they never understood who we are. We are not a species that gives up. We fight, we rebuild. And when the time comes, we return. Quinn smiled faintly. The time has come, sir. Before Mason could respond, the sensors beeped again. A red warning flashed across the screens. Multiple warp signatures detected, said the technician. Incoming ships, and hundreds of them. Mason leaned over the console. His heart slowed as he read the data. The Zephyr Dominion had arrived with its main battle fleet. More than 200 warships, all moving toward the asteroid field. They are coming for us, Quinn whispered. Then let them come, Mason said. We'll show them the meaning of thunder. Hours later, the dark sky outside the asteroid turned alive with light. Alien cruisers surrounded the field, firing plasma blasts into the rocks. Explosions lit up the void. Mason's crew took cover as the base shook violently. Shields at 30%. Quinn shouted. We cannot take much more of this. Power up the backup coils, Mason commanded. They are untested. So were we, Mason said. The Railgun's core began to hum again. Sparks flew as the engineers rerouted power from life support to the weapon. The station dimmed, the lights fading until only the blue glow of the coils filled the room. Target the lead ship, Mason ordered. Distance locked. Ready to fire. Outside, the Dominion flagship closed in, massive and shining with gold armor. Its captain smiled. This ends now, human. But before his words could finish, a blinding flash cut through space. The railgun fired again. The tungsten slug hit the flagship in the middle, piercing it clean through. For a second, it stayed intact, then tore apart into molten fragments. The human crew cheered, but Mason stayed silent. Keep firing, he said. The weapon fired again. Another alien ship exploded. Then another. But the power core started to overheat. Alarm screamed. Commander, we are losing control. Quinn yelled. Divert all coolant, Mason shouted. We hold this line. The battle turned into chaos. The asteroid cracked from the strain. Rocks flew into space as debris filled the area. The Zephyr fleet tried to retreat, but it was too late. The humans had already locked their targets. In 10 minutes, half the Dominion fleet was gone. The rest turned to flee. The station's systems finally failed, leaving the humans in darkness. The last thing Mason saw before the lights died was a transmission coming through. It was from the Dominion's wrath. Commander Mason, the human voice said, you have done well. The galaxy remembers again. The old fleets are waking. Humanity is rising. Mason stared at the screen, breathless. How many ships are left? Enough, the voice replied. Enough to finish what they started. And then the signal ended. As the dust cleared, Quinn stood beside Mason at the broken window. The stars looked calm again, but they both knew what it meant. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. The silence that followed was not peace, it was fear. The war never ended, Mason said softly. It only went into hiding. Now it's awake again. The stars burned quietly after the storm. The war zone that had once glowed with plasma fire and railgun flashes was now still. Only drifting wreckage and shattered metal floating endlessly through the void. The silence was almost holy. Commander Elias Mason stood at the cracked window of Station Orion, watching the remains of the Zephyr Dominion fleet scatter into darkness. Every breath he took felt heavy, every second stretched long. Around him, the station groaned like a wounded beast. Half the corridors were destroyed. Sparks hissed from torn wires. The air was thin and smelled of smoke and metal. Lieutenant Quinn limped toward him, her uniform scorched, her face streaked with dust. We did it, she said weakly. We survived. Mason did not answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the stars. No, he said quietly. We reminded them. Outside, the asteroid they called home drifted apart, split by the recoil of their own weapon. But deep inside its core, the railgun still glowed faintly, alive even in ruin. The weapon that had once silenced worlds now rested. Humming like a sleeping giant, across the galaxy, every listening post, every observatory, and every warship caught the same signal, the final transmission of Station Orion before it went dark. It was short, calm, and terrifyingly clear. This is Commander Elias Mason of humanity. The railguns are operational. We are not extinct. We are watching. The message repeated only once before fading into static. To the Zephyr Dominion, it was more than a defeat. It was humiliation. The once proud empire which ruled half the galaxy had been shattered by the very species they had declared extinct. Whole fleets vanished, and with them went the illusion of safety. On the Dominion's homeworld, Admiral Karth stood before the Emperor. His armor was cracked, his eyes empty. "They were ghosts," he said. "But the ghosts have thunder." The Emperor leaned forward. "Can they be destroyed?" Karth shook his head. "You cannot kill what already survived the end of the world." Meanwhile, far beyond the Dominion's reach, other races began whispering the same words in fear and awe. In the cold corridors of the Aaron Collective, the scholars gathered around old battle records. "They did not use plasma, not light," one said. "They used raw matter, faster than we can imagine. A single shot can destroy a fleet." In the hidden trading stations of the Outer Belt, smugglers and mercenaries spoke in low voices. "Humans are back," they said. "They have machines that throw metal like lightning." And in the deep colonies that had once belonged to humanity, people lit candles and smiled for the first time in a century. Back on Station Orion, the surviving crew gathered in the command chamber. The lights flickered, casting shadows on the walls. They were tired, bleeding, but alive. Quinn leaned on the console beside Mason. "What now?" she asked. Mason looked at her, the faint reflection of starlight dancing in his eyes. "Now we rebuild," he said. "Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to be remembered." He turned toward the Railguns viewing screen, watching as the weapon slowly cooled down. Steam drifted in the low gravity, floating like mist. "Do you think they'll come back?" one of the young soldiers asked quietly. Mason smiled faintly. "Of course they will. Fear makes empires reckless, but next time we won't be alone." "Alone?" Quinn repeated. Mason nodded toward the faint lights appearing on the edge of the radar. Dozens of small old human signatures, waking up one by one from long-forgotten hideouts. "The old fleets," he said softly. "They heard our call." Light years away, in the shadows of a dying red star, another ancient human ship came online. Its hull bore the faded name HSS Titan's Wrath. For centuries it had slept beneath the dust of a forgotten moon, silent and cold. Now its systems hummed again. Screens lit up, engines pulsed, and deep within its core, a massive railgun charged with soft electric thunder. Across the galaxy, similar awakenings began. Derelict stations flickered back to life. Buried bunkers came online. Human warships, lost for ages, powered up as if the stars themselves had whispered a single word into their machines: rise. The myth had become real. Humanity was no longer a rumor. Back on the broken asteroid, Mason stood with his crew for one last look at the stars before evacuation. The wind from a ruptured air vent blew softly against his face. Quinn stood beside him, holding a datapad filled with final logs. "You know," she said quietly, "when I was little, my father told me stories about the old wars, about how humans once ruled the stars." Mason nodded. "We did not rule them," he said. "We earned them, and we lost them the same way, by forgetting what made us strong." "What was that?" she asked. He turned his gaze toward the faint blue glow of the railgun. "Belief in ourselves, in what we can build with our own hands. We do not need gods or magic. We build our own thunder." The words lingered in the air, quiet but powerful. As the rescue ships arrived, the surviving crew boarded one by one. Mason was the last to leave. Before stepping onto the shuttle, he turned back for one last look at the weapon that had kept them alive. It was silent now, but he could still feel its presence, the heartbeat of humanity itself. "Sleep well," he murmured. "You've done your duty." The shuttle door closed and the engines roared to life. As the ship ascended, the asteroid cracked apart completely, the railgun collapsing into the black void below. In the years to come, the galaxy would tell many stories, about the thunder that spoke without warning, about the empire that fell in one night, and about the species that never truly died. But those who survived would remember the message burned into every corner of the galaxy's memory. Humanity does not fade. Humanity reloads, and as the stars flickered across the endless dark, somewhere in the silence between worlds, another railgun began to charge. The thunder was not over. It was only waiting.